All right, we're recording.
All right.
So, we're at the U.S. Open. We did a really fun cliff ride this morning.
Cheers, man.
Good ride. Good ride. Good ride. All right.
That was awesome.
Cool. Thanks for coming out. And when we did the ride, I said to everybody that came that it was really cool to do a ride with you because honestly, like, you pretty much are the reason I ride mountain bike. I'm pretty excited personally to have Hans on the ride because Hans is basically the reason I'm sitting here. It's like I remember being I said 15 before, it was probably more like 18, like a kid in Macy's, and I saw a Swatch video of you riding at what was the pier, Santa Monica Pier?
Right,
the trials video.
Beach,
yeah. So I was like a BMX rider, and I didn't really have too much exposure to mountain biking. It was, you know, I was all into BMX and a little bit of skateboarding, but I saw that Swatch video, and then I remember looking at some of like the early BMX magazines, and you used to get like crossover stuff, probably because Trials was more 20-inch when you first started, right?
Yeah, and GT had some roots there, and I got thrown in with that crowd early on, and people weren't quite sure yet if Trials would become the next big thing on mountain biking.
Yeah.
So that was before the mountain bike boom, and GT, obviously a BMX company, they pushed us with the BMX crowd as well, and I did shows with the freestylers together, and I got to do this big BMX Plus video, the 101 freestyle tricks early on, and I had like an intermission part in there. So I was never a BMXer, but I looked up to that crowd, and I mean, these guys were professional at the time, you know, like Trials guys from Europe, we were all amateurs, and looking at those guys who made six figures and drove Porsches, you know, it was pretty cool to get to meet all these guys, you know, in person. So
yeah. So before we get into that, I've been YouTubing now for like 2 years, and the thing that always surprises me, I've been riding professionally for 23 years. How long have you been riding? Like over 30, right?
Yeah, so 2 years.
Yeah, so I like the comments that I always get, there's still people discovering me now. If people are watching this on YouTube and they're not familiar, before we get into the BMX and all that other stuff, like quick overview of like how long you've been riding.
How long I've been riding?
Yeah.
Well, my highlights are...
Yeah, like you started over 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, I came to America and I kind of got to live the dream, you know. Trials was a European sport, and American rider Kevin Norton told me there's a new sport in America, it's called mountain biking. They always have trials as part of it, and I should come over and show Americans what Trials was. So I came, and I figured I'd come for a few months and then go back to university in Germany, and I was 20 years old, and I literally got to live the dream. I mean, I was very lucky. I was at the right time in the right place. Also making a lot of right decisions, meeting the right people, having, you know, I had some ideas that helped pioneer my career in the sport in some ways, and never thought I would be doing it professionally at over 50. Never. But I always said 1 or 2 more years. And
if I had a nickel for every time I said 1 or 2 more years, I would be a wealthy man.
Yeah. So that's, you know, in the early days I competed a lot, and then I started doing a little bit of, besides the Trials competitions, I started doing a bit of slalom and downhill, and I would like ride a mountain bike a lot and start doing videos. And I think what the biggest breakthrough for me probably, I mean, us Trials riders, just like you, we've done shows all over the world to all different occasions, from very small stuff to very big stuff. But what YouTube was for Danny McCaskill was VHS for me. And yeah. I was at a time when there was, way before the internet, there was nothing out there. So people had no expectations once, they were completely blown away. I had to stage for myself pretty much. And right. I really managed to make myself a name, and not just in the US, it was global.
Yeah.
And that helped. That helped a lot. And I mean, I used to call it extreme mountain biking before the term freeride came.
Right.
But that was kind of the beginning of freeriding, the stuff I did on my videos, and also with the Laguna Rats, that old mountain bike club I'm still riding with today. And those guys made me a real mountain biker. So. Yeah, that's the nutshell. You
talked about like the VHS tapes and stuff like that, and you were obviously like the pioneer. I remember like the first mountain bike videos I bought were VHS tapes of you. So like the first video that I saw, that one that was at Venice Beach, that was on your 20-inch bike.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe the first video was all kind of 20-inch bike, but then you started riding mountain bikes. So how did that whole thing like take place? Was it like a conscious thing, or were you just riding mountain bikes and having fun, and then you just started doing trials on your mountain bike? Or because for me, I rode BMX, and then I watched you, and since I was 6'4", I had a trials bike for a little bit, but then I just got a mountain bike. So I didn't really do the 20-inch thing too long.
Right.
And for me, I liked watching trials, but I also liked BMX. So I would do like a lot of BMX tricks on my mountain bike just because it was fun and that's what I fit. But were you just having fun on your mountain bike and then you just naturally started doing the trial stuff on the mountain bike too, or was it a little bit more conscious, or what?
Yeah, for me, it was more like the 20-inch stuff was like the King's class. That was the cool stuff, and the mountain bike stuff was like a lower level. You couldn't quite do the same moves. And,
yeah.
And the first couple of years, I would ride almost strictly 20-inch bikes, and then I started doing some stock bike trials competitions. And all of a sudden, I realized that I've gotten a lot more respect for what I could do on the bike, because people looked at the 20-inch bike like as a specialty machine that might be very easy to hop around or not, you know. But on a mountain bike, they all had one, and they all knew how hard it was just to bunny hop up and down a curb.
Yeah.
So if you see a guy like me jump over the side of a car on top of the roof, that was like something. So you got a lot more respect, and mountain biking kind of grew, and the 20-inch scene didn't grow so much in the late 80s, and I started doing more and more stuff on the 26-inch bike.
Yeah, and in the early days, the 26-inch really was a stock class. So when we would go to events, I would do pro stock bike, but then I would watch you guys do the pro modified, and it was bigger stuff, and it was because the mountain bikes couldn't hold up. You know, like the modified bikes were modified for trials, but nowadays it's almost flip-flop. Like in the trials world, the guys on the mountain bikes, they're not really stock mountain bikes anymore, and they go bigger on the mountain bikes than they do on the 20-inch.
They had big chain rings, they could barely
yeah.
clear a log.
Yeah.
But what was amazing, I mean, imagine that, the Kamikaze race, the Mammoth race back in the 80s when it was really big, and early 90s, they would have 1,000 people do the trials, because everybody who entered the event had to do also the trials.
Right.
And not just in every class, but also the top pros like John Tomac, Ned Overend, Zapata Espinosa, all those guys would also compete in the trials.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that happened then, myself and a few guys who started and were really good, like the Andy Graysons and Kevin Nortons and Mark Brooks and so on, and then you came shortly after that. We were so much better than everybody else that a lot of people felt a bit foolish. You know, they could barely ride over a 1-foot log, and we would like go up 4-foot logs, and then the sport also started to specialize, and then people would concentrate on just maybe cross country or just downhill, and they started modifying bikes for a discipline a little bit, and then the sport started to kind of specialize in one or the other.
When I first started YouTubing, I thought like you're just gonna make it rain with fans if you just turn on a YouTube channel, because back in the day, like if you made a video or you were in a video, there was always like this layer of checkpoints. You know, in order to get into a video, somebody had to say, Hans, you're good enough, Jeff, you're good enough. And now on YouTube, it's all day, every day. People are just like one-up each other, and it's like so crazy. Unless you're like a Danny McCaskill or a Fabio Wibner and you're spending a year making a part, it's like so hard to set yourself apart.
It's hard to stand out. Like, it's too many people fighting for the same piece of cake, and then it's also, there's just too much out there. You can only watch so much time-wise. We have only 24 hours in each day, and there's literally hundreds of videos coming out every day. And I mean, even I like to stay in touch with stuff, and I know now that some kids somewhere in Idaho can make with their iPhone a better film than we could do like 10 years ago with the best cameraman in the world, just from the quality of the equipment. So it's amazing, and then you can have post-production changing things, and of course the level of writing has changed too, but everybody fights for the same piece of cake. And like often like some video comes out like from Samanak or so, which you want to watch and see what he's done, and everybody talks about it, and sometimes it takes like 2 months for me to get around to find those 18 minutes or to actually watch it, because it's just too much, and then often it doesn't have the same impact. I mean, Danny managed to do that with some of his big videos to have that impact, but everybody else, it seems like
it's really,
you watch
really
it
hard.
today and next week it's forgotten, if not tomorrow.
I feel like there's a big gap when it's like super relatable, people love it, and if it's absolutely unbelievable, people love it, but when you're in the middle, it's a hard place to be. And I've noticed with doing what I do, like I'm trying to, I like to do videos every now and then that are like really tough trails and things like that to show people it's still a high level riding, but it almost seems that the stuff that people like the most is your personality. And that's a tough thing because you can't change your personality. So like people are either gonna like you or they're not gonna like you. It's not like riding where like if you're the best rider, you could be a good dude or a bad dude and your riding's talking. Like people are either gonna like your personality.
Well, there's
not.
some truth to it, and I always tried early on in my videos. I tried to bring the fun factor in, which was not before that. In those days, in the early 90s, it was all about racing, time, training, you know, like clocks, and I would like have fun and laugh and show some personality. And even in my videos, you would actually see my face. A lot of times, especially in the early freeride videos, those guys all had full face helmet on, and you would never know. I mean, it took me 2 years to know what a Wade Simmons looks like because I only ever seen full face, you know.
Right.
You know, so it's like and like my videos, even they were not always all about action and riding, even though at the time I did push the limits in many directions, but it was also a bit about fun and personality.
But that's what was awesome about your videos back then, 20, 30 years ago, and what's important now. Like I noticed that you could do the craziest thing, and if somebody's just looking at your handlebars, they don't care. And your videos, you used to do crazy riding, but it always had a story. And like, you know, you always had the monkey with you, or like there was always some kind of story to it as well, which is what, you know, if you're a hardcore bike rider, you love the riding, but if it's a story, then you get all the casual observers too, which is probably why you were able to get the following that you did, because it wasn't just bike riders. Like,
or I would talk rubbish all day long. And
you
people
did
like
have some
that.
good one, good
Art
some good
cultural
one-liners.
trials, and like where I go today, people still say that, or yeah man, Jamaica man.
Yeah. So, what's your plans like for the future? I was talking to Ken from a mutual sponsor of ours, Vittoria, and he threw out something like that you got 100 magazine covers last year.
No, not 100. But
All right, 95. But
what people don't realize, it's not always the fastest and the best who get all the exposure. You know, I found ways to generate a lot of media exposure for my sponsors, and I do the social media stuff and the online stuff, but I still also believe there's a place for the traditional media, the print, the TV, and I always try to set myself apart and not like go to the same. Yeah, I do a little bit on Pink Bike and stuff, but there's so much people out there in the world you can reach that never heard of Pink Bike, who like
Right.
mountain biking and outdoor sports, and I like to sometimes reach those people, and that's why I kind of mix it up, and I keep it also very international. You might not hear for a few months much from me in the US, but at that time I was doing stuff in Australia and Germany and Japan, and like for example, my latest thing is I've been doing these urban adventures, and
Yeah.
I'm literally investing now in a distribution package. I put $10,000 of my own money. I didn't have it in the budget from any sponsor. Out of my own money, $10,000 to invest into a worldwide distribution package that has a value of $750,000. So it's going to be everywhere, in-flight TV, it's going to be on all the TV shows like Gillette World of Sports, which is in 70 countries. But it's also going to be on all these online platforms, and I'm not saying it's going to be on Amazon or Netflix, but it's also going to be on platforms like that. And it's a huge thing, and that's like, you know, like the media has changed, and I have changed with that, and the social media is, as much as it is new and different for us, and sometimes I want to cuss it out and hate it, but it has a lot of advantages for me too. I can get a lot of points across, I can make, you know, I can tell my story, I can show people a different side of me, but I also do believe it is a bit overrated, and there's a lot more to a person and their career than just social media and likes, and it depends also a little bit the depth of impressions that you do. And like you said earlier, we all find new fans and people who've never heard of us, you know, but at the same time there's also a lot of people even here at the event that started riding because of you. They saw you do a trial show at some shop like 25 years ago. They watched you competing in the X Games.
I can't even imagine, because I have like grown men coming up to me now. Like, you know, when I first started, it was a teenage kid. I started riding because of you. Now it's like grown men, and you've had way bigger impact. It must be mind-boggling sometimes when you think about all the people that you've influenced to get on a mountain bike.
Yeah, it is, and it sometimes, I think I didn't realize it, how big my videos were at the time. And just a little bit like when Danny McCaskill came out with his first video, he had no idea when he got a phone call from David Letterman.
Right.
He was like, oh no, I'm gonna ride with the lads in Glasgow this weekend, you know.
Right.
It was like he thought like, oh, when you're a pro, that's normal that like David Letterman calls you, you know, and
Yeah.
stuff. And I didn't realize that, but that's kind of one of the nice things about social media. People tell you these stories, and like guys come up to you, and they, like, recently a guy was like, dude, because of you I bought my first GT, and since then I bought 8, and last year I opened my own bike shop, and since 6 months I'm carrying GT.
Nice.
My world is complete. I mean, that's an impression a
Yeah.
sponsor likes to hear,
Yeah.
over like just a like for a wheelie, you know.
Right,
But and those kind of stories are nice to hear, you know. Like, I had a really nice experience. Doug Henry, one of the greatest motocross guys ever, we had dinner the other night, and he's paralyzed now, and GT bought him a special downhill bike. And we met at this dinner, and I had the impression that the guy had no idea who I am. No big deal. That's, you know, like, he had never heard of me. And we had dinner and we talked, and then the next day we had made plans to go ride. And he told me, I told my wife afterwards that if you know, this guy is like, if you play hockey as a kid, you want to be Gretzky. If you play soccer, you want to be Pele. And if you ride a bike and you ride a technical section, you want to be Hans Rey.
That's
And I
awesome.
was like, holy shit, I didn't
That's
even think
awesome.
you knew who I was.
Right.
You know, so, and it's nice to hear these kind of stories. So.
It's funny because when we do it, we take it for granted. Like I would look at Doug Henry the same way and be like, oh my God, it's Doug Henry.
Yeah.
But he looks at you and he's equally impressed, and you wouldn't expect that, because like we think motorcycles are so cool, like, but they're watching bikes and they think bikes are cool.
I know, he hashtag childhood hero, and I was like, I thought you were older than me. Damn it.
Nice.
I'm always the oldest.
Cool. So what do you have coming up on the horizon?
I'm planning now my second urban adventure with Martin Mays. We're gonna go to Naples, Napoli, and the Amalfi Coast in Italy. And Naples is one of the craziest cities in the world. It's 2,800 years old.
Wow.
It has some of the craziest traffic in the world, but it has also these old castles and underground subterranean tunnel system. But then right next to it is Pompeii and the Vesuvio volcano and some world-class mountain biking and some really bitchin' island issues. So I'm looking at cities where they have really, really great, incredible nature on the outskirts, but then you dive into the city, and the urban part in LA, we did it on e-bikes.
Yeah,
The other stage is on regular bikes, and it was just something different. I've been traveling for the last 20 years to all the corners of the world to do these adventure trips, and honestly, I've done it, and I'm a little bit, you know, I've seen the world, and it's not that special anymore. Nowadays, everybody jumped on that adventure, trend thing, and they call every little photo shoot an adventure, and it's not that special anymore when somebody eats a bug in China. We all seen it now on TV. So,
Right.
And I feel like this urban thing, you can build in so much culture and bring in some guest riders, and
I would think by like all of the adventures that I could think of have a pretty significant like geographical like story or historical story, like when you're searching for headhunters and, you know, the Amalfi Coast, like you must be like a history buff by default at this point, huh?
well, I was always interested in the history and the mystery of places, and I tied this is kind of I read books on the stuff, and I tie that into my storylines. And like when we look for ancient alien dwarfs in China or headhunters in Borneo, or went after the pyramid secrets in Egypt and talked about stuff that was 2 years later became news.
Yeah.
You know, but and I always kind of like to tie that in and made that part of my story. And it's funny because like 2 or 3 years ago on social media, they all started talking about storytelling, got to tell a story. It's like, dude, I've been trying to do this all my life. All my adventures were always about in search of something historical or mysterious, and if nothing else, you tell some background information about the place and the people, and so, yeah.
Is there any place to find those cataloged online or anything like that, like some of those old adventures? Or
yeah, I have a
someplace?
YouTube channel that has a bunch of stuff on there. It's probably
Okay.
Hans No Way Ray, and
I'll
then,
put that in the description for sure.
and then there is on my website I have a page with videos, and then if you just Google my name, a lot of the stuff back in the days was on TV, and that reached a lot of people.
Yeah.
Outdoor Life had a lot of my adventures on TV, and they would air over and over again, and we would you know, like we would reach a lot of a broad audience with those trips, you know, and often non-cyclists would see it, or you know, TV like Pacific Blue, when I used to do stunts in that show, and later I had a little bit, sometimes I had a cameo or a role in
You
there.
had some good acting roles in that one.
But you know, I know, I still can't believe I didn't win an Oscar. But you won't believe how many people walk up to me, like at least once a month or twice, somebody
And
says,
quote Pacific Blue?
I started riding mountain bikes because of Pacific Blue.
Really?
So,
That was a
yeah.
good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, awesome. So the next thing you have coming up is
Yeah, in the summertime,
the trip with Martin.
yeah, this is my next big trip. I do a bunch of appearances and stuff, and trade shows and festivals like this one here, and then like Trans Napoli is the next one, and I'm already working on a Trans Hong Kong. So
Nice. All right. Well, like I said, honestly, I don't think I'd be sitting here if it wasn't for you. I doubt I have any fans that know me and don't know you, but if you don't, I'm going to put all the links in the bio and everything below so you could check out Hans' stuff. But it was super fun doing a cliff ride with you this morning.
thanks,
and
Jeff.
then
You an inspiration too.
awesome. Thanks. All right. Cool, man. Awesome. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
man.
That was awesome. And that totally is true. I don't think I'd be riding mountain bikes if it wasn't for you. So
I wouldn't sit here in this parking lot drinking a beer.